Okay, now we're on to the main presentation for the night. So it's my pleasure to welcome the member from Cumberland South, Tory Rushton, and he's going to provide an introduction for our guest speaker.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues, Minister John Lohr. John is a lifetime resident of Kings County, a farmer and a successful agribusiness entrepreneur. His parents immigrated from Holland in 1958 through Pier 21 to farm in Nova Scotia. In 1999, the minister purchased and rebranded the family business into a spice processing company. In 2017, John sold that company to his sons. Minister Lohr graduated with honours from the Nova Scotia Agriculture College, where he was awarded the Basketball All-Canadian Award. Go figure with his height. He then attended the University of Guelph, where he completed a Bachelor of Science in Plant Protection from the Department of Environmental Biology. In 1997, he was awarded the Newfield International Agriculture Scholarship for a 3-month study period in England. Minister Lohr served on many boards and committees in the agriculture, Christian, and volunteer communities throughout the province and beyond. In addition to his widespread community, sport, church, and agriculture involvement, the minister has co-owned and operated multiple businesses with his beautiful wife, Heather. The minister believes in hard work, completing his tasks at hand, fair and equitable playtime, during what he is asked to do. I'll debate whether he does what he's asked to do, as we look for favors in Cumberland County, and listening to advice, mostly from his wife and his assistant Peter, who's here with him tonight, and meeting his commitments. Minister Lohr was first elected in 2013 and re-elected in 2017 and again in August of 2021 when the PC government formed a majority government. The minister was sworn in as the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and is also responsible for military relations, emergency management operations, and the Office of the Fire Marshal. He has a determination and strength to ensure that his work gets done. He and his wife, Heather, live in Port Williams, have 3 sons, which they are all very proud of. Now, just a quick question before we go any further. Does anybody like summer savory? Show of hands. Has anybody had Farmer John's summer savory? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Minister Farmer John.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and Tory, thank you for that kind introduction. You never know what you're going to get for an introduction, but that pretty well covers everything, I think. That's a pretty comprehensive introduction, so I appreciate that. And it is a pleasure to serve in the legislature with your MLA for Cumberland South, Tory Rushton. I do want to acknowledge Elizabeth Smith-McCross, and I saw her in the room, MLA for Kings North, and Kings North, I'm sorry. I'm on my Cumberland North. I'm in my own, Kings North is me. So, my apologies. I do want to acknowledge elected officials here too, Mayor Murray Scott, and Murray's done some heavy lifting for us in the past year. We appreciate him very much, and Deputy Mayor Mark Joseph, and Leon Landry and George Baker, and we appreciate your service. On behalf of Premier Houston, I want to bring greetings to you all and express our appreciation as a government for the Cumberland Colchester, the Cumberland Business Connector, that type of organization. We see all of you making very big commitments to make that work. And I think when you go through life, anything, you never lack for what you give away. And what you're giving away is your time and your energy to serve on this board for the betterment of your whole community. And I know the Premier appreciates that. We see that all over the province. People do that, or giving your time to serve in your community as a councillor, an elected official. And Board Chair Dave McNair and CEO Jonathan, we appreciate your work here, and that gift of generosity of your time just makes such a difference in our community and all our communities. So thank you on behalf of Premier Houston. So it's a pleasure to speak at your AGM. I think I was counting them in your website. I think this is your 7th, and I thought, no, maybe it's your 8th AGM. I'm not sure. But pleased to be here tonight at the Dr. Carson and Marion Murray Center. Let me first recognize the important work that Dr. Murray brought to this community and area. Healthcare, as you are all aware, is a priority for our government. And it is hard after coming through the pandemic to go anywhere without acknowledging the needs and challenges in healthcare. So healthcare is a pillar of moving our province forward for the future. We are committed to doing what it takes to make healthcare better. This is no easy task, but it comes through loud and clear every time we meet with the Premier. Your local MLA, Minister of Natural Resources, can tell you the same thing, and I do want to again acknowledge the work Tory Rushton does for this community on healthcare issues in your area, but also his ongoing work in his ministerial role. He brings a common sense approach to government that balances the needs of the people here in Cumberland South with the bigger picture concerns throughout the province. And he's doing some heavy lifting for us on some of our energy files, I want you to know. For me as Minister, housing is a priority, as it is for many Nova Scotians. In the early days of our government, I was told I needed to understand the housing needs of our province through a different lens by an opposition member, of all things. Now, I want you to know it may look like in the legislature we're always playing with our elbows up, but there are times when opposition members and government members talk, and a previous minister said to me, John, you need to go and go to Regent Park in Toronto and see that. So why would a housing minister from Nova Scotia need to go to Regent Park, you may ask? For many of you, like me, it was the last place I thought I should go to learn about the needs and solutions for Nova Scotia. But I went, and I learned, and I took some very important principles and lessons from that one-day trip to shape the future of how we look at housing in our province. On the trip, I was hosted by a local community visionary for the redevelopment of Regent Park. For those who don't know it, Regent Park had a history of being the worst place in Toronto to live. A pizza delivery person would not go into that community for fear of not returning. It was a high-density 1950s era public housing with a reputation. What happened was incredible and was all around development, planning, and building a new sense of community. So bringing together people in the community with vision and a new sense of direction and purpose was how Regent Park was changed. Why do I tell you all this? Today, we in Cumberland County, you in Cumberland County, have very similar issues and challenges. You have a greater need for housing. We all need to build for our future, but I need you to take up that challenge and build your community, the community of your future. Our government cannot do this alone. No one program or amount of government funding can change your future. That's up to you. There are immense pressures on housing across the country, and immense pressures in healthcare. We need to attract doctors like Carson Murray and his family. We need to welcome the talents and their families offer. Anyone here heard of Anne Murray, right? We need to think outside the box and move towards a goal of building for our current needs and beyond. That's why about a year ago we hired Turner Drake to do a study for us on what the needs are in each area of our province. You, along with every other part of our province, needs more housing. Today, the shortage in this area, we know, is somewhere in the vicinity of 500 units. That's 500 homes in this area that are needed for families and individuals. Nova Scotia is growing across our province. In fact, for the first time since 1921, that's 102 years ago, we saw our median age go down. That's by 0.7 of a year, which is a big drop. So we needed to get younger. That's what the Ivany report told us, and we are getting younger as a province. So right now, here and everywhere, we need more housing, and we need more people to build and fill the vacancies in the job market, and we need more collaboration. It's going to take a willingness to do things differently, strong collaboration from all levels of government, and aggressive action by you, the people in this room. We are competing against time to grow our province to meet the demands, and I know this area has a rich history, but our future depends on how we rise to meet the challenges. How welcoming are we to newcomers and the sense of community we build together? I've often heard why we can't do things. We need to rise above this. and move forward. Tori mentioned my parents coming here from Holland in 1958. They didn't actually speak a word of English. They had no money. But they had what I believe, they had several things that one thing every immigrant brings, and that is they had to answer the question for themselves, can I make it here? That's a big question that hangs over every immigrant and drives them forward to work. And my father had an incredible agricultural education. I went to the University of Guelph and learned a lot about agriculture, but when I came home on the farm, I learned how to farm from my father. And I know that here in this community, Roger Bacon was involved in assisting the effort in that era of people from Holland coming to Nova Scotia. And it was a family in Berwick area. I don't know if any of you would know the name Fred Walsh, but the Walsh family was where my parents landed for 2 years, and we still have that connection with that family. So I also know that Roger would not be content for us to let this opportunity that we have right now in our province to slip through our fingers, but to give us a bit of advice. So like Roger Bacon, I went from farming into politics. And I know the challenges. In farming, you have to make decisions quickly, lots dependent on the weather, but always moving forward, evaluating all the risks and taking the challenge each and every day. I like to tell my colleagues in the legislature that I had enough cabbage in my own hand to fill the entire legislature and bury it on the outside. I think that's true. I don't know if I have enough to fill this arena in my own hands and bury it on the outside, but certainly to fill it on the inside, so I worked very hard. My family's business started by my late father. I sold it to me at an early age, and now I sold it to my sons at, very young. I bought the farm when I was 25. My sons were in their early 30s. That story is a long story. There's a lot of tragedy wrapped up in that whole story on both occasions, but it's a real pleasure. I tell you, in my farming career, the one thing that gives me the most sense of satisfaction is to have passed that farm on in much the same way that my dad passed it on to me. So Farmer John's Herbs, which you see today in the local grocery stores, just didn't happen. The growth of the business took time. Finding our nation, marketing our now somewhat famous summer savory was not always the plan. We just had to adjust as we went along. We had to change the way we plant it, find the right product to plant that produces the right product for our climate. Was there another way? My son Aaron has shown me that there is different ways to farm. And he's moving along to meet that demand and going a different route than I did, but still growing summer savory, and even what my father did. So since taking office, our government has made historic investments in housing. We've invested close to $200 million to increase, improve, and preserve housing supply in the last couple of years. We've injected over $80 million in every region of this province to invest in modular housing options for healthcare and skilled workers, additional housing options for students, temporary housing for people experiencing homelessness, funding to preserve and modernize and improve existing affordable housing, public housing, and grow the community housing sector. Here in Cumberland County, we have identified 36 parcels of land on Mechanic Street that can be used for housing. A partnership opportunity notice is open right now for expressions of interest to build on this land. And we've made land available across the province in this program. So partnership opportunity notice. Partnership is the key. Partnership is our future in building stronger communities. It's often said it takes a community to raise a child. We need to rise up to the housing challenge together. We need to raise more children to take over our businesses. This spring, we announced a total of $20 million in modular housing projects for healthcare and skilled workers. And also provincial land will be identified for the projects, and we are partnering with municipalities to make this happen. And I really appreciate the town of Amherst and every municipality stepping up to help us meet our housing challenges. The Housing Trust of Nova Scotia is ministering that funding and managing the logistics for us of the modular projects. and continues to engage with municipalities and government representatives to advance that work. It is our goal to have some units available in communities in acute need by this summer. These modular projects are not unlike the ones being undertaken by Oxford Frozen Foods here in Cumberland County, where modulars are being used as employee housing in Meadow Lane. And I want to acknowledge how innovative the Bragg family is being. They are an example for other employers throughout the province. Our new Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Agency is engaged in 58 active capital investment projects throughout Cumberland County. The agency is the single largest landlord in your area here and throughout the province. However, we will never meet all the needs. For example, the Corner Villa is currently undergoing an exciting net zero energy upgrade as part of the Investment in Canada infrastructure program in partnership with the federal government. This ongoing project aims to transform this senior apartment building, which is not far from here, into a model of energy efficiency and sustainability. The Centennial Manor elevator is undergoing a major hydraulic modernization. This project is to ensure continued, safe, reliable operation of the building elevator and avoid major components becoming obsolete. 144 Victoria Street is undergoing a major exterior renewal, replacing siding, windows, doors, and upgrading insulation. All of the 58 projects we have in Cumberland County are at different stages, ranging from the approval process to almost complete. Collectively, they represent an investment of approximately $5.4 million. The impact of these initiatives will be felt across the 19 public housing sites, positively impacting our roughly 200 tenants. In addition to these active projects, the Nova Scotia Public Housing Agency is also planning 7 capital projects in Cumberland County. All of these projects will be publicly tendered soon and represent a great opportunity for local contractors to build on the work. The Home Repair and Adaptation Program helps those with low to moderate income with critical repairs and upgrades that will allow them to stay in their own homes. In 22-23, the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing assisted 84 seniors households in Cumberland County through this program. The total amount approved in Cumberland was $890,000 for an average per household of $10,600. Typically, these are roofs and furnaces that are repaired, although sometimes they're more extensive than that. But the primary focus is to keep seniors in their own home, and normally it's the emergency of a roof repair or a furnace repair that will engage us the most quickly. In the first 2 months of this fiscal year, we have assisted 16 senior households in Cumberland County. The total amount for this so far is $203,000 for an average amount of $12,725 per household. As you can see, we are addressing the housing crisis from all angles. Investments in green energy are important to ensure a sustainable future of our communities and protect our environment. We have a massive investment in helping Nova Scotians get off of oil furnaces. We have one of the highest densities per capita of oil furnaces in the province, and we are making a massive investment to help people transition out of oil into heat pumps. So with the need to explore and expand renewable energy opportunities, this is the time to tap into the rich resources right here in your backyards. Government has identified 8 communities around the province where the geology suggests good potential for geothermal. Spring Hill has been using geothermal for many years and is certainly one of the leading candidates for that. Government is currently supporting a study by the municipality of Cumberland County to explore what could be significantly expanded to make use of the area's geothermal resources. Other communities are less advanced, but we look forward to seeing the possibilities as we move forward. And I think about every 6 months I have a conversation with Mayor Murray about where can I help? How can I get some of our valley farmers growing strawberries in greenhouses up here? Because I think that's what should happen, or maybe tomatoes or cucumbers. But this geothermal resource you have here should be used by the greenhouse industry, I think, for low-cost energy. So our job in government is to help provide the right conditions for business to succeed, and we aim to create favorable business climate and reduce barriers and red tape. So one way to create those right conditions is to encourage more collaboration in economic development. Like I've already stated, the opportunity is now. All of us here want to create the economic conditions for businesses to grow and our communities to thrive. We need to build for today, tomorrow, and the future. I know the Cumberland Business Connector plays a key role in supporting businesses to grow through your programs and supports. And you do this in part by leveraging the advantages of your region. A key part of your work is collaboration through partnerships, whether it's with our colleagues across government, community organizations, or you folks here in this room representing the business community. We need to work together to find innovative solutions to our economic challenges and opportunities. And that's why opportunities like this are so important. It's another chance to have open conversations, hear your feedback, and discuss how we work together. As a government, we will continue to do everything we can to support your work and further your success. I look forward to building this area through seeing the vision, new vision, like the one which your MLA Tory Russian is advancing. We need to build community together now that will create a better Nova Scotia far into the future. Thank you very much. Tori has told me I have to answer questions now too, or we're going to have questions. So as Murray knows, the scrums, that's the most high tension part of being a government minister, but we welcome your questions on any topic, and anything I can't answer, Tori can answer. So
You're the speaker, no? So thank you very much, John. And yes, so similar to last year, we'll do 10 minutes questions, 15 minutes, whatever rounds out to. So anybody have any questions for the minister? And I just want to highlight it, just a special thank you. You flew in on a red eye this morning, back into Nova Scotia this morning from quite a trip. So thank you very much for making the time here tonight. So, Mr. Chair.
You mentioned about funding for modular program in Nova Scotia. Do you know if any of that funding coming to Cumberland County, or is it other places in the province?
So just for the ones that didn't hear that, want to know if there's any funding coming to Cumberland County for the modulars.
So as I mentioned, the $20 million program we announced is being managed by the Nova Scotia Housing Trust, and I'd have to go back and double check with them on that. We're also investing in modulars, another program which I didn't mention. One of my roles as Minister of EMO, of course, is dealing with Fiona and the terrible fires we've had recently, and I know I didn't say anything about that, but we're just extraordinarily grateful for all of the firefighters and people who have contributed to helping those, especially the fire emergency. One of the things we're doing with that is we're making further investments in modulars there. In fact, a larger investment than the $20 million investment. We haven't actually announced the number, so I don't want to say it. And my staff are actively searching out modulars across into New Brunswick as well. We're dealing with manufacturers, so there is opportunities, and my staff are actively working on that right now, but we haven't signed those agreements yet, but we're very close.
So David, well, we have the minister here. The answer is yes, right? Everybody say yes. Yeah. There's modulars coming to Cumberland County, right, Minister? Yes. Yeah, see, we got the yes. Anyone else have any? Jay.
Excuse me. First of all, the Housing Trust of Nova Scotia is engaged in our neighbors looking property, so thank you. We don't have anything to say. Nothing concrete yet, but we're here and we're looking. But also, I want to say I expected you to mention it. Thank you for the $766,000 you provided to town members for the housing fund in March. We got a nice email at 4 o'clock. $750,000 for deposit in our account. Where'd it come from? So we appreciate that, and I know that Cumberland County got even more. So So just want to say thank you, and we'll put it to good use.
Thank you. Do you have anything? Yeah.
We called that the Sustainable Services Growth Fund, and I know it came in at the last day of our fiscal year because we simply had been working on it, but we had to either get it out or not get it out, and we got it out. So it's a real privilege to have seen that money go around the province and really focus in terms of the mandate for that money to be used for furthering the infrastructure needed for increasing housing supply. So and that went around the province. There's a recognition that the housing crisis is being experienced from one end of the province to the other, every single community. So thank you for acknowledging that. I probably should have had that in my speech, right? So.
Anyone else?
I guess one comment, as we're seeing population growth, we have an obvious interest in seeing that be disproportionately outside of HRM and let our rural areas catch up. Is that a conversation that's been happening about trying to direct it into rural areas?
So the ratio between HRM versus the population growth in rural. Okay.
I did mention which we haven't released yet, but the study on the housing needs assessment across the province. And what my way of answering your question is to say that when the consultants provided us with a low-level growth projection, a medium-level growth projection, and a high-level growth projection, and they based the numbers in the study of what is the shortage of units on the median level growth. But even at the lowest projected level growth, we're short units. We're short houses in Nova Scotia. The farmer in me says, what do I have to do to achieve the highest level growth? So my goal is to achieve the highest possible growth in HRM and in AR communities. So whatever we can do to achieve that. So we see all parts of the province growing. Clearly, our major city is just such a huge economic driver. Anything we can do to maximize growth in every part of this province, we will do it.
Had another question from Amherst.
Sorry for all the questions. Do we know when you're going to release the Turner Drake report to municipalities? Obviously, we need that information to make our application for the housing accelerator.
The Turner Drake, yep. Everybody heard.
Yeah. What's the answer?
The Turner Drake report is being, if you make a request, we will release it to you immediately. The public release of it will be on the 11th of July.
So, okay, I knew it was coming up soon. So one of the things we're doing with that, we're going to provide individual municipalities with their own data. So send us a written request. We'll get that to you as soon as we can. The Housing Accelerator Fund, just to sort of talk about another thing, as Tori mentioned, I was in British Columbia the last couple of days and on infrastructure and housing meetings. And one of the things that we see the federal government doing is through something called the Rapid Housing Initiative and the Housing Accelerator Fund is bypassing the province and going directly to municipalities. So municipalities need to be tuned in and looking at these funds. So as a province, we see housing as our responsibility. We're not happy about that. We made that clear to the minister. We don't want to be left out of this. We want to be a partner in it. We want to. We feel that we know our own province best, and but for whatever reason, that's what the federal government is doing. So that's just the current reality. So we know you need that data. Whatever you're applying for in the Housing Accelerator Fund, please let us know because we don't always find out until very late in the procedure sometimes. So, but that is the current fiscal reality of our country and the current, just the fact that there's starting to be, which was never the case as far as back as I can remember, we're starting to see a lot of federal direct to municipality funding. So you municipal councillors and mayors need to be watching that opportunity. All right.
Way in back.
Yeah. Hey, John. I'm wondering, with your experience now as Minister of Housing for the last couple of years, is there anything you can share with maybe our municipal councillors on the issue of NIMBYism and how to combat that, because you see a lot of housing developments just go by the wayside because of organized community members who don't want the house to be worth the big development to be their name. And to me, it seems like the biggest thing. A lot of developments can watch that.
So just so everybody can hear that, so the new development next to a neighborhood, the NIMBYism from that current neighborhood, not wanting it in my backyard? Excellent. So some suggestions to municipal council?
John has any insight in job on.
Yeah, it's a massive issue, and we see not in my backyard everywhere. We had I mentioned the land, the provincial land for housing thing that we were offering. We had the first round of it. We offered 37 different property places, and then one of them, which we had a pretty large affordable housing unit going in. We were getting a lot of complaints in that community that they didn't want that in their backyard. When we looked into who was complaining, it was our own tenants in public housing that were complaining. They didn't want affordable housing next door. So I think that it's not something that is really economically stratified. It's not the wealthy not want. It's just people don't like change in their own backyards. And I don't know quite how to fight that. I think that I think we have to. I mean, when I look at the problem, I think to myself, because really it cascades right on to the municipal level, because you're at the municipal level, you're making, you have a very difficult, I'm not kidding, I think it's just extraordinarily difficult decision of land use bylaws and who builds where. That is not an easy decision. And I'm asking myself, how do I strengthen you or encourage you to have the ability to look beyond the not in my backyard comment, because we see it everywhere all the time. And I read a story, somebody sent me an article on it from San Francisco. And as you know, San Francisco has the worst housing crisis in the United States. There was a local billionaire in San Francisco who was funding, really very committed to funding public housing there and trying to affordable housing and doing what he could with his wealth. But later on, it was found out that he was part of the not in my backyard activism in his own little community at the same time. So it's just something that is not easy to deal with, but it's real, and we need our, I ask myself that, how can I make your job easier as municipal councillors to just deal with that? And we're looking for solutions to that problem, but it's just a factor of our time. It's just something we deal with, so.
What's some of the plans, when you talk about affordable housing and business growth, what are some of the plans to stabilize rate increases for utilities such as gas, oil, and electricity?
Rate increases.
He's pointing the finger at the energy minister. Well, so if you recall, last fall, we tabled Bill 212, and it was to try and cap rates for the increase that the Nova Scotia Power has put forth. One thing we did find out that the Utility Review Board, well, we knew that, was an independent body anyway, and they regulate the energy, they regulate the gas. But they did find it that in their findings, Bill 212 did its job. It capped the rate at 1.8, but they still allowed the fuel cost overruns and the renewable aspects of the new meters, if you will. If you look at your bill right now, if you're on a new meter, the increase went up in the last bill. That was what the Utility Review Board did. But we're also, as we know that we're going to a greener grid, if you will, or biofuel that could be delivered to a furnace, or renewable natural gas coming through the meters to industry. As we move through that, we know that there's a little bit of a cost for capital expenditures to build that infrastructure that we're going to need. But that's a part of the thing that we need to work with the utilities and the Utility Review Board to ensure that the ratepayers in Nova Scotia, it's an affordable process. We looked at the past year when we introduced Bill 212. We looked at the past year. Nova Scotians could not afford a huge power hike that was being asked by Nova Scotia Power. We managed to get some of that capped, but at the end of the day, the Utility Review Board, which is independent of our government, independent of municipalities, they still do have to make the decision, and we'll always be an intervener on those avenues. But once we get building up into those renewable energy sectors. We see from other jurisdictions that it actually sort of plateaus the energy expenses. And but there's other things other than just the utilities you're utilizing. One of the announcements that we made as a government in December about the free heat pumps for low income, but there was also 70% of that $30 million that was announced. 70% of that was for re-innovating your homes in middle class homes, if you will, for insulation, for upgrades in heating, for upgrades in the electrical to bring those energy costs down. So it's not just about the utility. There's also things that we can do at the home level, the homeowner level, through Efficiency Nova Scotia that certainly will assist every single buddy in this room. If you applied for a heat pump, were denied, there's lots of other programs that are out there. I met with Efficiency on Tuesday for one of their announcements, and they're welcoming these people to give them a call because there's money sitting there for efficiency programs within your own dwellings. I was going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Lohr, for the opportunity. Just curious where you see the intersectionality of nonprofits and the business community working together to address the housing crisis across the sort of continuum of housing.
So when we came into government, one of the things that we became aware of was that this not-for-profit community housing, co-op housing sector was very weak in Nova Scotia. By comparison, public housing, we have 11,200 public housing units in Nova Scotia, which is one of the highest per capita rates in Canada. That's 11.2 public housing units per 1,000 people. British Columbia has 5 public housing units per 1,000 people. So just so you know. But the community housing, not-for-profit, public co-op housing, that sector is very weak in Nova Scotia. So we've done a lot to lift the boat of that. We have a program called the CHAP, Community Housing Acquisition Program, where we use essentially the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing is the bank, and helping not-for-profits purchase housing to keep it remain affordable. We invested in that in a number of different areas. We've invested in cooperative housing through a co-op called Compass. So if you look up Compass, of course, you Google Compass, you'll get all kinds of answers, but Compass Cooperative Housing Nova Scotia would probably get it for you. And one of the things we've seen in co-op housing was that we had many small standalone co-op, not many, but we've had a number of small standalone co-op housing operations, and they don't tend to replicate themselves. They're very self-focused. But when we had this amalgamation of some of these into Compass, we could see that they start to have the bandwidth and the strength to say, okay, we're going to expand here, we're going to expand there, and we've enabled that expansion of that cooperative housing too. We've done a lot in not-for-profit housing too, and we continue to do that. We've announced some units in New Glasgow not too long ago with the Nova Scotia Cooperative Housing Association, and so there's just been a number. I'm very proud of what we've done in the co-op and not-for-profit and community housing, and we've gotten notice across the country for that community housing acquisition program. So we have lifted the boat of community housing.
No, we're cutting you off, Mayor Scott. Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Rushton, Mr. Lohr. Just on behalf of the municipality, I want to thank you for being here today, both of you. And like Jason and Amber said, we the municipality were recipient of some money at the end of March, the end of the fiscal year, and we really appreciate it. One thing I just want to mention to you is you well know this. I talked to Peter about this a lot about infrastructure in small communities, how important it is. You can get a chance tonight coming in here, but you will hopefully within the next month or so. Junction Road, for example, $7.5 million. There's no possible way small municipalities like ours can take on projects like that. The partnerships with yourself and the federal government. Tori and I talk about this a lot. Infrastructure everywhere is so important. We merge some communities here. Huge infrastructure deficit. We absolutely have to have partnerships, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to partner with some of these projects now. I just want to remind you that every opportunity you can to ensure that you remember that with your federal counterparts and yourselves with us, because for us, for survival, it's just vital to have those opportunities to get those jobs done. Otherwise, you can't do it. So, thank you for that, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Stott. I appreciate your comments. And I think what I would say we are doing as a government is we are investing in the future of Nova Scotia. So we have, I think, an unprecedented in our time opportunity to see this province grow. So that means we have to invest in everything at the same time. We need more health care. We need more housing. We need better roads. All of that has to happen at the same time. We need better systems within government. There's greater demands on our own software systems. We're spending a lot of money on software. One patient, one record in healthcare, a massive investment in software and computer systems. So everything, to see the province grow, everything has to happen. You need everything at the same time. And we are making those investments, and we want to continue making those investments and achieve every bit of the growth that we have. And I was thinking, I really believe that the prospect for growth for Nova Scotia is really good long-term. And that's because we're living in a world that just has a lot of trouble in a lot of jurisdictions, and we're a pretty safe haven. We're one of the safest havens on the whole planet for people to come to. We're going to see people wanting to come to our province from around the world, I think, on an ongoing basis for a long time to come. And that's the reality, and we've got to make room for them. We've got to see that growth.
Any other questions? Maybe I'll just wrap it up on this highlight. And you're quite right. I had the unfortunate opportunity to travel a lot of municipalities over the last few weeks because of the wildland fires, and certainly heard from the municipalities there needs to be a partnership. And we just recently had Minister Blair tour the region in Tantallon and down in Shelburne from the federal level. I know John couldn't be there, but it's also partnerships such as this, Jonathan, too, that allow government to evolve, whether it's at our level, the municipal level, or the federal level. So I want to thank everybody for tonight for the opportunity to invite Minister Lohr, but also for the opportunity again to invite me to sort of take part in a little bit of Q&A. I got a few less questions this year than last year, but thank you very much, Minister Lohr, for being here.